Welcome back, everyone. So let's build out our category page. To do that, what we need to do is we need to build a new routes component. This one will be category, because that's really what we're showing, is the full category listing. I'm going to call this inside category.styles.sass, and then category.component.jsx. Our component, of course, is going to import in our category styles file. And then I'm going to say const category is equal to this functional component, which we export by default. As for the category itself, what do we need to do? Well, what we need is actually this value from the URL, because if you remember in the final application, when we go to hats, we know that we're on the hats route. When we're on jackets, we know we're on the jackets route. So this URL parameter is actually going to be the thing that tells our category component what data to get. And this is a little bit of architecture that we need to think about. So the first thing we need to do is figure out how to get these parameters. So let's start at the route level first. I'm just going to copy this over into my shop component. And here I'm just going to duplicate this and reflect the appropriate placement like so. And now for the route. It's not an index anymore. It's going to match a path. And what this path will match is actually going to be a unique string. This string only works when you're trying to say, hey, I want a parameter here, meaning that you can access it from a component. And you say semicolon and then the name of the variable. So I'm going to call it category. And what I'm going to render is the category component. Now, inside of the category component, in order to access this new parameter, we need to import in the useParams hook from React Router DOM. useParams now will allow us to actually get this value. And the way it gives it to us is it actually gives it to us as an object. So if there are multiple parameters that match, then we'll get multiple. But for us, because we know there's only category, that's what we called it, category, we can destructure this off from the return of useParams. Now what we also need, once we get this category value, if you think about it, once we get jackets, well, we need to call jackets on our categories map to get the associated products to this category. So that means that we need to now bring in the context. So let's bring in use context from React. And let's also bring in our categories context. So many C's. So with our categories context, we can get the categories map. Use context, passing in categories context. And then with categories context now, we want the actual products from this category. So typically, what you could do at this point, you could just say const products is equal to categories map at category. You could do this. There's nothing wrong with doing this. Essentially, whenever this component re-renders, these products will be gotten. But this will happen every time this component re-renders. So what we instead want to do is bring in useState and useEffect, because essentially the only time that we want to change these is if the category value changes or if categories map changes. So here we can say we have products and set products, which is equal to useState, which by default has an empty array. And then we'll just say useEffect whenever category changes and categories map changes. Then what you can do is call set products, where we set the value equal to categories map at category. This way now, if our component re-renders or anything like that, our products will not update unless category or categories map has changed. That's the only time we will do that. And now what we're going to return back is just our div and us mapping our products through using the product card component, which we don't have. So let's import that in as well. So here we'll just say, use the product card. And of course, key will be product ID. And the product is going to be the product. For this div though, we know we need some styling. So I'm going to give it a class name of category container. And inside of category styles, we can just directly style category container, which is going to be display grid. Very similar to what we had before. Grid template column rows, or columns, sorry, 4 columns. So we're going to say repeat for 1FR. I want a column gap of, let's say, 20 pixels. And then I want a row gap of 50 pixels. You can change these gap values to whatever you want. But now if we come back to our main application, and let's say I navigate to /hats now. Now when we navigate here, we seem to see that something breaks. Here if we scroll up, we see it cannot read properties of undefined reading map at category. So when we look inside of our categories map, at this point, remember, our categories map is saying, hey, you cannot call map method on undefined. So for some reason, our products is undefined. The reason why this is undefined is because we're trying to call category on an empty object when this app first mounts. Remember, our categories context fetches this data asynchronously. But when our application mounts for the first time, it's still trying to actually run this code synchronously. This is happening before we actually get these categories from our Firestore. So what we need to do is build in a safeguard. In order to do that, what we can do is we can say, hey, if products is undefined, then don't render it. Only render products map if products has a value, which means here, in fact, what we can say is that instead of calling this by default with an empty array, we can call categories map at category as the starting value here. With this now, this will still work because we know categories map by default is an empty object. So now if we save this and we come back here, let's just get rid of this so that we can at least see. Now we do see that we are rendering our component without errors. This styling conflict is actually a separate issue that we'll discuss, but I don't want to move on from this topic just yet. Remember, if you have components that rely on asynchronously fetched code, you will need to put in some kind of safeguard so that you only render your component if the actual data is present. And that's exactly what we did here. We defensively programmed against our products being undefined. So now that we have our products in and we have this check in, let's talk about this styling issue. What I want you to do is actually try and debug it yourself. This is a good chance to see and think about why some of these errors might be happening. So what I want you to do is I want you to take a look into these different elements on the side here and try and identify why we have this issue. If you can't, don't worry, I have the answer. I'll give you a little bit of a hint. If you click on this component right here, you should take to this page and see that this is also broken. Why is this happening? Well, take a look into it, and then in the next video, we'll fix this together.